everybody, and thank you for tuning in. It's been a while since I got to create any content for this channel. I have been beavering away creating some EFT tapping videos for my holistic channel, and this channel has took a little bit of a back burner while I did all that. But I've been much more deeply involved in supporting home educating families recently, and it's such a roller coaster for people who choose to home educate. And I thought, well, part of the reason why I chose to set up this channel was because I wanted to share our home education journey. Well, clearly I'm not home educating today. I've got some client sessions here today and Thursday. It's Thursday today is one of my days where I do that. But I've got a little gap and a little space, and I thought I'd start to talk a little about the joys and wonders of home education. So there is a video on my channel that I made recently about the differences between home education and homeschooling, why I feel it's so vital that we retain here in the UK, where I'm based. Anyone who's not come across me before, I'm based in the UK. Here in the UK, it's so important that we retain our language around education out of school to be home educating. And that being, without completely rehashing that video, that being like a fundamental language difference because of what school is and what, when you home educate, the choices and the paths and the windows and the doors and the everything, the life that opens you out to, and just the different perspectives and points of view that education outside of school opens up for us. And that a lot of what I do as a therapist, a lot of the support and the guidance and the healing that I guide people and lead people through as a holistic therapist and energy healer is to decondition and deprogram the mind from a lot of the stuff that fundamentally comes from a schooled mindset. And that isn't just from school itself, but it's from our upbringings, it's from the adults that we had when we were young in our lives. So it is from school, it's from teachers, but it's from our mums and dads, it's from our grandparents, it's from the other adults that were in our lives, religious teachers and leaders, coaches, you name the kind of adults that you may have had in your life. Because most of them have been in school, that mindset is there. And because school is literally indoctrinated into us as a society, that mindset is there of how things should be, even things like what time we eat, even things like what time we go to bed. All of that takes us away from natural rhythms and natural cycles. The way that the school year is laid out takes us away from natural rhythms of nature, of moving into the winter, and how during the darker months we may want to rest more, because that's actually fundamentally how mammals function. And we are mammals. We are like living, breathing creatures of the planet, and we fare best when we work in the natural rhythms. But also, we ourselves each have individual natural rhythms, and being made to get up and go out and be in a school classroom at 8:30, 9 o'clock, being there for 6-7 hours of the day, such a young age as well. Do the maths, is that right? I'm not sure how many hours children in school these days, but these are all things that take people so far away from what is natural. And then then we wonder why our young people are burning out, why they're got social anxiety, why they're school refusing, why any neuromagical traits are so amplified, why they struggle academically or with an exam situation when actually they're really smart and really bright. And it's all because the school system, as my previous video discusses, was set up to train soldiers, and it was implemented into a lot of Western countries within the world to support the factories and to get men in the cogs in the machine to work to a particular time scale and time frame. And all of that reduces creativity. One of the first videos I ever watched, I'll see if I can find it and link it somewhere. One of the first videos I ever watched, I can't even remember now if it was before I started home educating, if it was one that I discovered after, while my first was very small, but it was about Sir Ken Robinson, and he's discussing about school killing creativity. And this is pretty much what it does. And when I observe now my own 3 daughters and their learning styles and their interests, I was super triggered by a video that my 13-year-old was watching the other day on unschooling. And it wasn't on unschooling, it was actually somebody criticising unschooling. And she was basically going through some TikToks from some, this reactor YouTube channel was going through some TikToks of somebody talking about unschooling. Now, I've seen these TikToks and they are decidedly questionable in how they're like showing that how unschooling works. Because first of all, the little ones that the mum in the video, the unschooling mum in the video is talking about, are really little. I think the son might be like 6, and the reality is we make our children read and write too young. If not left to their own natural devices, a lot of home educated young people don't learn to read until an average of, it's say, 6 to 7 years old. It's obviously, if they're going to school, they're kind of encouraged into that much sooner, and then they can, if they're really not interested in it or they're really struggling for some other reason, because it might just be that where their brain functions hasn't quite got it yet, the pattern repeating of words and language might not quite be there yet, and so they struggle with it. And then the pressure to read, I've seen so many young people taken out of school in like year 1, year 2, already have a hatred for reading and then claim they can't read, when actually the reality is they can read. They've just already got such a hatred for it that they believe they can't read. And when they're that little and they believe they can't read, it takes a lot of work on the part of a parent, a mum or a dad, to encourage them to learn that they can read. They were just being pushed into it too soon. So back to these TikTok responses, these TikTok reactions. This little boy was copying letters and copying words, and the reaction video I was watching was basically saying that this little boy wasn't being taught anything, so he wasn't really reading, he was just copying patterns. And I was like, hold on a minute, isn't that, if you were sat with a workbook in a school setting or a homeschool setting or whatever, wouldn't that be what you were doing anyway, is copying patterns? Isn't that how all the workbooks that I had, that my girls had, that they never really used, they all had the little dashed lines that you draw around to copy patterns. Wasn't I taught, when I was taught to write at school, how you do the letters in particular ways? There was like TV shows, BBC learning shows that we watched that showed you how, we were taught all the letters that started with a C shape. So you were taught the C first, and you did lines and lines of the letter C, and then you can learn from that a D and an A and all the other letters that mimic the same. And you're just using patterns to copy to learn to write anyway. Whereas a lot of home educated little ones, particularly with an unschooling or self-directed approach, will start to copy whole words. And I know when my girls came and started saying like, I want to write my name, or I want to write mum or dad, or something like that, they'd literally be copying what I wrote. I remember my mum teaching me to write. She'd do her own. She'd literally do it all. It's in all these workbooks now, and she'd do like little dashed words for me to trace over to learn to write. And I would have been like 5, 6 maybe at the time. So I want to just start this little series of videos by really talking about how daunting it is to withdraw or decide to home educate. Withdraw your young people from school or decide to home educate, because we are conditioned to think school is necessary to start with. So my history, which I talk about in another video, was that my sister withdrew her children from school when I was about 16 or 17, like literally just coming out of the school system myself. I thought she was completely insane. How will they ever learn? Like, I knew nothing about home education. I'd never known anyone be home educated myself at that point. It's a lie. I knew one girl who was a school refuser who had been home educated. And it was quite an interesting perspective to have just come out of the school system, which I hated school, and particularly enjoy school. I learned quite well, I learned quite fast, but it bored me, to be perfectly honest. And any of the subjects that bored me, I was just bored. But I was a good girl, so I didn't cause trouble. I was a good girl, so I got on with the work that was expected of me. But it bored me, and I didn't have particularly pleasant experiences and all of that stuff. So it's quite a daunting prospect when you think about how you think education has to look, that children have to be sat down and shown what to do to learn, that even if you choose to home educate from day one, that you think, how am I going to find the time to do that? How am I going to find the resources to do that? Do I need a tutor? Do I need this? Do I need that? Do they need to sit with for 5 hours a day to like they would in a school setting? And this is why, like, the things that I do as a holistic therapist play a role in teaching people how to think differently, to literally deprogram themselves, to go, well, no, none of that is normal, none of that is natural, and none of that is necessary for young people, particularly like infants, as in infant age, little ones, sort of like primary age, 5 to 9, 5 to 8, 5, 6, 7, 5 to 7 year olds. When they're learning, they truly don't need any of that structure. They really don't. In fact, a lot of early learning years teachers, if they have the energy and resources and the skill, the talent themselves, will make education as fun and playful as possible, because it's been shown, and this is why in a lot of countries school doesn't start until 6, 7 years old. Academically, like the whole classroom sitting thing, a lot of countries there's a lot more play than there is here in the UK until the age of 6 or 7, is because learning happens best with a playful energy and with a playful mindset. And this is true of adults too. Like, this is literally the case with adults too. We learn when we play. We learn and we retain when we're enjoying it, when it's fun, when it's like exciting, when we enjoy the subject matter, we'll learn better. And you can get children in a room, and if they're interested in a subject, take a subject that might maybe being taught at school. I'm going to go with Egyptians because, you know, because I know it's something that a lot of little ones like. It was something that I remember doing at school at primary age, in about 6 or 7. We went to the museum in Manchester and looked at the Egyptian stuff, which one of my daughters went to recently, and was like, oh, there's all this Egyptian stuff, and I was like, I went there when I was little. And if you've got like little ones who are interested in it, they're going to be enthralled, and they're going to want to learn, and they're going to want to learn other aspects and things that come from that, like aspects of reading and aspects of writing and aspects of picture making, because it's like pictographic language is obviously what we know of the Egyptians with hieroglyphs. So, but then if you've got like another dozen children who are really not interested in Egypt and are much more interested in, I don't know, transportation, that they will appear like they are not interested in the subject. And are they not interested in the writing or the reading, or are they not interested in the subject of Egypt? Flip it the other way around, and you like studying transportation through the ages, and you've got like these children are interested, and these ones are like, you know, staring out the window, like distracted by the rain, staring out the window, like disinterested, appearing to not be like able to do the writing or any of the other stuff that's involved. And it's purely because the subject matter is boring. So when you take away how the encouragement within a school setting is for everybody to learn the same thing in the same way, in a uniform way, and yet you've got 30 little people in a room who, like, the subject matter is only going to interest maybe 5 of them. What are the other 25 doing? What are they like? So some will be, you know, they'll have already learned to conform, and they'll have already learned that, you know, they've got to sit down, shut up, do what they're told. You maybe get another 10 that are like that. The other 15, well, you know, they'll probably be smart enough to, some of them will be smart enough to play along, but then some are just not going to be interested at all. And what happens to them? They're the ones who either get left behind because they appear to be academically slow, or they become the troublemakers, and then that label follows them. And actually, that's they're just disinterested in the subject and the way it's being taught. So the beauty of home education is it opens up a whole world of learning. And I'll make another video on like the different types of home education, because obviously there's different types of home education. There's what we do as a family with self-directed, unschooling, free school, I think was what was being talked about on this reaction video that wound me up. And then there's a more structured approach. There is the sitting down with books, workbooks, and subject matter, and even the curriculum. And some young people really thrive that way. One of my daughters would thrive that way if that was the option that was presented to her. 2 of my daughters just wouldn't at all. One would feel like she was totally failing at everything, and the other would just be probably a little bit of a troublemaker. And yeah, she's Gen Alpha, and yeah, Gen Alphas are getting a bit of a reputation for not really wanting to sit in school settings. And then there's like a mix of both. There's other options that allowed that include autonomous learning, but with a more structured approach. So children choose a subject matter, but then there's a structure to how that's taught. And yeah, all of these methods work. All of these methods work because even if you're following a completely structured approach, a big thing to know, big secret to know, is that you don't have to sit and teach them for 6 hours a day. Nobody has to teach them for 6 hours a day. Nobody. The teachers in school do, because they're teaching 30 children, of which 25 at a time are not interested in the subject being taught. They're teaching that many children. They've got to monitor them. They've got to have them come and sit and read to them. They've got to keep it interesting. They've got to break up fights and arguments. They have got to do paperwork for the whole school or governance or local authority. I don't know what teachers have to do. Maybe a teacher can fill me in, but I do know that just like nurses, they've got a lot of paperwork to do. They've got lesson plans to do and things like that. So teachers, again, have a lot going on for them. There's a lot of people say actually that teachers make really bad home educators because they have this set way. They need even more deschooling and deconditioning and deprogramming from the way that education is supposed to look. I remember, I know several times when my girls have gone to go and learn and do things with people who work in teacher settings, school settings, and the teachers genuinely don't know how to teach outside of a classroom. They genuinely don't know how to teach outside. And when they've got young people there who won't sit down with a worksheet or a workbook and do the thing, they don't know how to teach them. And that's on the teachers. Like, really is, that they don't realise that of the 30 people in their classroom, they are going to have 30 different unique brains that work in 30 different unique ways. And you might get 5, 6, 7 of them who can shuffle their brain around to do things the way a teacher says. But the rest, this is where they then get labelled neurodivergent and get labelled as troublemakers because their little brains are like, no, that's not how that works. So home education gets to be varied, it gets to be different, it gets to be whatever your individual young people need. So again, I've got 3 different learning styles, different interests, so varied interests. Don't even start me. There was like argument this morning because one wanted to talk about one thing and one wanted to talk about the other thing, and musicals are stupid and spooky stuff is stupid and history is stupid, but unless it's Hamilton, because Hamilton's history and that's but Hamilton music and Hamilton musicals are stupid, and you're just like, I'm in the middle of them going, oh my god, I'm glad they were going off on their own to go do something. Let's make sure they got their own train tickets so that if they came home separately, they're not bickering all day. So yeah, that uniqueness, the big thing about the uniqueness is you get to follow their unique learning styles. And I know people who started home educating in a structured way and then they feel like their little one is desperately failing because they're not doing things that way. They won't sit and learn with a workbook, and when they begin to then look at unschooling philosophy, they were like, oh, maybe this is something that we can do. But it has to start with us. We have to decondition ourselves. We have to deschool ourselves. We have to look at why. Like, literally ask yourself why. You know that age 2, 3, 4-year-old where they ask why all the time. It's like the year when you send them off to school, go and ask the teacher why. Why? Why? Start asking that about everything. Start asking that about why. Why do they have to go to school? Why do they have to go to school in the first place? Who on earth ever, and go and look at the history, and that's interesting. Why do they have to sit in that setting? Why do they have to have lunch at 12 p.m? Why do they have to go to bed at 7 p.m? Why do they have to learn to read and write rather than cook and clean or fix things? Why do they have to learn that at that age and not at that age? And this is, it comes up as well in home education groups, GCSE times, or at like my eldest's year 11 now, she'd be doing her GCSEs next year. And it comes up time and time again, like, how do they sit GCSEs? Like, how does an adult sit GCSEs? Well, does an adult sit GCSEs for starters? Or if an adult like totally failed in school and wants to then go into A-levels or into university, how do they get there? You don't just, you failed your GCSEs and you failed your A-levels and that's it, then you just got to go and like work in a shop for the rest of your life. No. People who completely flunked out of high school and college go on and get the highest level degrees. They do, because they're not stupid. They just were being educated in a poor setting. And there's like countless ways to get to the like academic level if you need to go academically because that is your interest, to go and do something that requires academia. But the other thing that's massive, and something as an entrepreneur, something that I see all the time, is another secret. You can make a living and a livelihood doing what you absolutely passionately love without any academics. Shh, don't tell anybody that, because obviously there's people in control in the world that don't want everybody going off and doing what they love and their creative pursuits and their passion projects, because then it takes people out of the machine, out of the, not that we've got factories anymore, well, we do have factories, but it takes people away from those jobs, those boring office 9-to-5 jobs, and there are just people that really enjoy that and really thrive in that environment. But that is not everybody, and that is actually very few really who work and operate thriving in that sort of environment. So that's the big keys are education happens at any time, anywhere. You don't need to, even if you want to follow a structured route, you don't need to sit and educate and teach the same way that a teacher does. Little ones particularly, but everybody, including you and me, learns better and retains the information when we love the subject matter. So, if you do want to teach them reading and writing and maths, what do they love? What is their favourite thing in the whole wide world? Do you know how many children of the up-and-coming generations have learned maths through Minecraft? It's phenomenal. Who can do instant multiplication in their heads because of Minecraft. And then, we could talk about all the really profiting Minecraft YouTubers in the world who are making a reasonable living from playing games. Like, have you ever been on Twitch? There are some really, really thriving gamers out there who are just doing amazing things and literally get to live and play their highest excitement every day. Just not just gaming, but following their interests and their passions. Oh, we'll try this today and we'll try this week, and then oh yeah, I really, really enjoyed this, and then before you know it, they're a top level comedian or touring the world in a band. And it's these are things that you begin to look at and learn when you stop thinking inside the box that society puts in. So, all that being said, summarising this video, home education is not school at home. We'll talk about that in another video, like separate from the previous video on home education and homeschooling. It's not school at home. It is very much whatever your unique individual little human needs, or your older little human, whatever your young people need is what they can learn and how they can be educated. And another shocking thing, they will learn to read and write unless there's something like dyslexia. They'll learn maths unless there's something like dyscalculia. If there's a neurological issue that prevents them from learning, certainly explore that. But there's a reason why they don't test for those things until a little bit later in primary age, because they can't actually tell whether a 6 or 7-year-old is dyslexic particularly well, or what level that dyslexia is. So prior to the age of like 10, at least, young people will learn to read and write organically, unless they're being neglected. And I'm going to assume, if you're here watching this, you're not neglecting your family. If your young people learned to walk and talk all by themselves, they will learn to read and write all by themselves. And I have evidence of this in my own family, with my own daughters. I watched my nephew whilst I was despairing, going, oh my God, he'll never read. Learn to read and write completely on his own without ever being taught. My 3 daughters all learned, and at different ages, at different levels, in different capacities, doing different things. None of them learn to read in the same way, doing the same things. None of them learn to write in the same way. They all read and write. They don't all enjoy it, but then who of us enjoyed reading and writing at school? And actually, it's a total lie. They all love reading. They don't all love writing with a pen. The eldest could draw all day, literally. She literally would draw 24 hours a day. She's tried and then collapsed in a heap. Not quite, but she will literally draw all day. The other would watch musicals and then write and then sing and then play an instrument and anything like that. She would do that all day. And the littlest one, she would craft all day, and she would then write from ideas that she's gamed with. And they all learned different ways without me sitting with a book teaching them words, without me sitting with a pencil and getting them to draw letters. They've all done it organically. So unless you're not presenting them with an opportunity to read, here's a book, let's sit and read. We sat and read with all of them. If you never give them a pencil, they're never going to learn to write. That's true. That is true. If you don't give them the things, if you strap your baby in a chair and leave them there and you never speak to them, they're not actually, and don't expose them to, videos and TV and stuff like that. They're never going to learn to speak or to walk if you don't give them the opportunity until they're freed from the chair or they begin to be spoken to and hear language. Except that, eventually they'd do that too. Even in the most neglectful situation, a baby, a toddler at like that age would eventually get up off the floor and walk, make noises, and if there was any sound of language coming from anybody anywhere, start to use words, because that is the nature of our species. So yeah, organic learning. Worry when they're at a particular age. So like, what age would you worry if your child wasn't walking? At what age would you worry if your child wasn't talking? You don't need to be worried if your child can't read or write by the age of 5. You don't need to be worried. Maybe when they get to the age of 10, you can start going, that might be something else going on here. Maybe before then, if there's like history of it, like if there's a history of dyslexia in the family or other issues with neurological function, then certainly get it looked into before. But presenting them with the opportunities to do these things, allow them to show you what they know, and watch for signs that they're reading. Like, I was watching my eldest at like 4, 5, 6, that she was spotting that she could spot the patterns of words, and that's all reading is anyway, spotting the patterns of the words, the letters that become the words that we then read. So let me know if there's any subjects that you'd like me to discuss about home education or about family living, deconditioning, deschooling yourself, because that's something that I do a lot with, and anything specific, family scenarios that you'd like me to explore in relation to self-directed education, home education, how you, if you're not in the UK, can begin to explore this idea that if you're not sending your young people into a school setting and you are teaching them at home, how you can begin to decondition the wording and the language around school that you may use at home. I did see somewhere recently an American group that's discussing home education and not homeschooling, and I was like, oh, they're doing it. Because this is like, yeah, I've put that out in there in the universe, and it's my dream to see people from all over the world start calling it home education, not just here in the UK. And to stop right now here in the UK with this slide into, trapped by the local authorities often, calling home education homeschooling. It's not. It's home education. Always has been, always will be, always should be. If you're educating outside of school, it is anything other than schooling. And with that, I'm going to go. And I've got a client soon. So yeah, I will talk to you all again, make another video on this. Maybe not as long as this one. Maybe not as long until the next one, as it has been since my last one to this one. Lots going on. Anyway, have an amazing time, day, night, evening, whatever it is that you're doing. And I will talk to you and see you all again very soon. Bye. Put my glasses on to see the stop button.